That's stupid. Why would we do that? But the sixth company, the guy at Santa Monica Press said, that's actually kind of fascinating. Why don't you write me a couple of chapters and we'll see.
Welcome to 10 Minute Travels. With me, as always, is Phil Freeman.
And with me, as always, is Shane Patrick. And we have with us Charles Fleming, adventurer, journalist, motorcyclist. And if you want to learn anything more about 10 Minute Travels or what we do, check out 10minutetravels.com.
Let's get right to it, shall we?
We had talked about the stair books, the walking books, and that's the other, of course, is the thing that was my fate to do, and turns out to have been a good thing that I did because it's been helpful for people.
Well, that was the thing I talked to Shane about, which I found so fascinating, was when you started talking about how you got into the stairs, the walking books. Could you bring us through that? I love the evolution of it and what it turned into. It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it's all a little weird and unexpected, even to me. It doesn't make that much sense. But I had a period of like in the late 90s, early 2000s, I had a run of very bad health. I had a hip replacement, and then 2 years later, I needed another hip replacement. And then a couple of years later, I broke my leg. And a couple of years later, I broke my collarbone. And a couple of years later, I had a spinal surgery. And the next year, I had a spinal surgery. And the next year, I was scheduled for a third spinal surgery. And at this point, I'd just been a mess for about a decade. I just was in pain all the time. I couldn't walk. I couldn't sit for any long period of time. Problematic if you're a writer. I couldn't drive. I couldn't attend things. Like I couldn't stand in line for more than a minute and a half, or I would start to be in terrible pain. So going to a museum, forget it. Go to a cocktail party, forget it. Like anything like that. Go stand in line for a movie, forget it. I just couldn't do any of those things. My life had gotten very, very small. And I was up for this third back surgery, and I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. And I called the doctor and I said, dude, I can't do it. I just cannot have another surgery, another hospital stay, another rehab. I'm just not up to it anymore. I'm gonna see if there's anything else that will help me. And what helped me was if I could get upright and moving and walk a little bit, it relieved some of the pain in my back and my hip and my lumbar region. So I started walking. And the first day, my wife drove me down the hill. We live in a very hilly area. She drove me down to where it's flat, and I walked like 2 blocks and got back in the car and came home.
And that 2 blocks was like a major victory.
Well, that was like, I wasn't even sure I was going to get to the end of the second block. It was really, really hard. But my back felt a little better. I mean, like it felt a little like less agonizing. So I went back and I did it again. And I went back and I did it again. And I found that the more I did it, the more I was beginning to be free of back pain. Like it could not hurt for an hour, which to me, that was like being on heroin. Like just not having pain for an hour was just was an experience of immense ecstasy. Like I had taken some powerful drug because it was so long since I had not been in some pain. So I kind of started compulsively walking. And after a while, I started walking the hills of Silver Lake where I live. And I started noticing all of these just staircases that seem to go, public staircases that seem to go between this street and that street. They were in the steeper sections of the city. I didn't really know what they were for. I didn't know why they were there, or who put them there, or how many of them there were. But I decided that it would be a good game to start kind of marking them and trying to find them all, because I knew that I needed a gimmick. I'm not, I don't like exercise. I hate exercise. In fact, I will not exercise. I will play games. I'm an avid hiker. I'm an avid tennis player. I'm a scuba diver. Like I do all kinds of physical things, but I cannot bear just exercise. So I knew that if it was just exercise keeping me walking, I was going to stop. And then my recovery was going to stop. So I decided I'll make a game of this. I'll see if I can find all the staircases in Silver Lake. There's probably 20 of them, and I can find them all, and maybe I'll learn something about them, and it'll just keep this sort of game going. And it turned out there were about 50 of them, and by the time I had found them all, I felt fantastic. So I thought, well, I know there's a couple in Echo Park too, which is sort of the next community over from Silver Lake. I'm going to go do those too. I bet there's 20 more there. And there were about 60 of them there. And by now I was feeling fantastic. And by now, some of my friends were expressing concern about me. They were like, I see you out there. What are you doing, dude? Like, I see you walking all the time. What are you doing? And so I explained it to them and they said, well, that's kind of cool. What do you mean staircases? And can I walk with you? And I said, well, yeah, I mean, it's stupid, but sure. And everybody thought it was much cooler than I did because I guess I had gotten kind of used to it. Uh, so I started leading these little walks of like my wife and I and two guys, my wife and I and four guys. And somebody finally said, this is fantastic. Why isn't this a book? I said, because it's public staircases. Like who could care less? It's who cares? I mean, I've been walking here for 5 years now. I haven't bumped into a single person. Nobody gives a shit about this. And they said, no, but you know all this stuff like that Anais Nin lived there when she died, and Raymond Chandler lived here when he wrote part of the script for the Maltese Falcon, and you know Charlie Chaplin had a studio there, and Walt Disney's first studio was over there, and it's cool and it's just fun. And I thought, well, just to get them to shut up, I thought, well, all right. I'll put together a little proposal and I'll send it around. And like 5 companies immediately said, no, that's stupid. Why would we do that? But the 6th company, the guy at Santa Monica Press said, that's actually kind of fascinating. Why don't you write me a couple of chapters and we'll see. And he, being an idiot, he said, this sounds like a real book to me. And so we proceeded, and I put together 42 walks, like circular walks. You start here in a little, at a cafe where you can get a coffee and go to the bathroom, get a cold drink or whatever. And you go up here, up this street, and you turn left, and you go up these stairs, and then you go 2 blocks, and you go down these stairs, and you go 5 blocks, and you go up the other stairs, and then you go up some more stairs. And an hour later, you wind up back where you started, having had a little exercise and seen some things that you hadn't seen, and maybe learned a couple of things about LA history that you didn't know. And we put 42 of them together and packaged them with these nice drawings and so on. And he was all excited. And I told him the week before we published, I said, I beg you, please diminish your expectations because no one cares. No one cares. I said, this is a good thing that we're doing. It's a great document that we put together because someday somebody will look at this and go, oh, that's cool. But he said, no, I think you're wrong. I think it's going to be very successful. And for whatever reason, he was right. It took off, and then it took off some more, and then it took off some more, and it sold, and it sold, and it sold, and it sold. And because he's a greedy publisher, he said, we have to do more. We have to do another book. Let's do the rest of the stairs in LA. And I said, dude, I did them. Like, I got them all. Like, there's no other walking to be done here. And he said, well, then we have to go someplace else. Let's do San Francisco. And I said, no, somebody's already done a pretty good urban hiking book there. And he said, well, there's got to be someplace else. And I said, well, nobody's done Berkeley and Oakland, and there's thousands of stairs there. So, the first book was published called Secret Stairs, A Walking Guide to the Historic Staircases of Los Angeles. And the second one, Secret Stairs East Bay, A Walking Guide to the Historic Staircases of Berkeley and Oakland. And then that one turned out to be really successful too. I did all the research up there because my daughters were both living in Berkeley. We're at university there. And then because he was still greedy, he said, we have to do another one. And I said, well, I've been meeting people who say, I love your book. I love the staircases. I've been on a bunch of hikes with you, but I've got toddlers and they can't climb stairs. Or I walk with my mom and she's got a bad knee. So I said, well, what about here? Let's do a book. We'll call it Secret Walks. And it's like the great places to walk in Los Angeles that don't require, they're not hilly particularly, and they don't have stairs, but the same thing. It's like these really amazing hidden walks, the Venice canals and certain hiking areas. There's this lake nobody knows about, and there's this park nobody ever goes to. And that turned out to be successful too. And so, the joke is this thing that I thought was stupid, nobody would buy, nobody would be interested in. I've met, I mean, seriously, thousands of people who have told me, your book really changed my life. Variations on, I started walking the steps and I lost 80 pounds and I'm dating for the first time in a decade. Or people that met on the stairs and got married, or people who met on stair walks. I used to lead these walks. At first, as I said, it was me and my wife and 2 people. And then it was me and my wife and 4 people. And at the end, at the pandemic's beginning, when we really had to stop walking in groups, it was me and my wife and like 120 people. I was like the Pied Piper, leading these people up and down stairs and so on. And so many people who, my wife and I started walking every Saturday we go on a walk together, and it's like we're newlyweds again. And I mean, just more and more stories of people who discovered in LA that they loved, or discovered a group of friends that this is what they do on Sundays, is they get together and they have lunch, and then they take a walk with one of the books, and then they have a glass of wine afterwards and tell stories. And it's turned out to be this amazing, completely inadvertent gift to the world that I got to participate in. Not especially remunerative for me. It's not like I've made a lot of money, but I made a lot of money on some of my other books, so that's fine. But like the lobotomy book, it feels like a blessing that I was able to help produce this thing, because it's a good thing. It's changed people's lives. It's helped people. And what's better than that? Not much.
That was Charles Fleming, journalist, adventurer, walker. And if you want to learn anything else about 10-minute travels or whatever we do, check out 10minutetravels.com.
And we want to remind you to make sure your sense of humor matches your sense of adventure. And please like, subscribe, and share this podcast on all the platforms.